started with Pinnacle, and we'll, let's see, we're gonna reopen the subdivision hearing and make some changes to the wording. So I'd like everybody on the board and you and on both, well, no, on your,
On my side,
on
this time,
your
yes.
private
Right.
position, whatever the word is. So everybody just read over, you have copies for
I have
everybody?
copies if,
So that,
I've seen this, so, and I agree.
you agree with the wording? Would you like me to read it out, or?
It's not that long. I mean, the findings 3 and 8 are not that long.
So, is that a yes?
Sure, yes.
Okay,
Will you open the meeting?
I'm gonna do that right now.
Okay.
I'd like to open the meeting, and this is the public hearing for Pinnacle's subdivision application. Before I get to that, I'd like to suggest that we say the application is complete because I'd like to make a motion the application is complete because there are no changes. Everybody good with that? Second? All those in favor? Good, okay.
Are you recused?
I
No,
must be,
no,
I
as an
certainly
alternate.
can't vote. I'm an
Well,
alternate.
well, you're here,
Right, I'm representing Pinnacle.
Pinnacle at this
Yeah,
moment.
So I'm,
You'll be
Right,
back
that
on,
should be shown in the
yeah,
minutes.
yeah, so
okay.
you're here as a representative of Pinnacle for
Yes.
the moment. Okay, so I'm gonna go to, first of all, give any of the public would like to make any comments? I'll take that as a no. Okay, so here, I'm gonna now I'm gonna close the public hearing, and we'll go into deliberation. I'm just gonna read the number 3 and number 8. Number 3, there's adequate access year-round for emergency services to the lodge, barn, and staff house. For the cabins, there is inadequate access for emergency services during winter and muddy spring conditions. Number 8, it was agreed between the board and the applicant that change to multiple ownership would require the condominium association to disclose the following: residency prohibitions, vehicular access for emergency vehicles is adequate year-round to the lodge, barn, and staff house. For the cabins, the vehicular access for emergency vehicles is inadequate during winter and muddy spring conditions, limitations of present septic and water systems. Change of use for the individual buildings that is inconsistent with the use on the lot is not allowed under the current zone. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to have 3 and 8 reflect what was just read. Do I have a second?
Second?
And all those in favor? All those opposed? All right,
Thank you.
so be it. And I don't need to do anything else.
you need to sign the
Okay.
notice of decision.
And I can close the meeting before signing, though, can't I?
Yes.
Okay, that hearing is closed. Is it 12th?
Yes. Let me just go quickly make photocopies, and I can give Rich the original.
All right. And, Jack, why don't you come and sit with us, and
Okay.
we'll wait for David to get back, so.
While I'm here, the folks that are here, Vicki, I know you.
Oh, we'll go around the table, starting with Kevin.
Kevin Sarr, SA, HR.
You know Vicky
Yep.
I'm Tim Cook.
and John Stadler.
Okay.
And now you're back on.
My name is Rich Brown.
Rich Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, and just for your information, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is an informal hearing.
Yes.
So anything that you say or we say we're not bound by what we say here. This is an informal discussion.
Sure.
And we'll just wait for David to get back.
It's technically not a hearing, it's a discussion.
I'm sorry, discussion,
Sure, informal.
informal
Yep.
discussion. Very creative.
Okay, just, and I've read the regulations,
Okay.
the subdivision regulations. The issues in front of the board is simple.
Okay, we'll just wait for it.
Just wait for it.
Yeah. Could you two please keep it down?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be having this much fun in this
Yeah,
meeting.
right.
Okay.
That's
We'll
right.
try not to, we'll try to hold back.
All right, so go ahead, Jack.
Okay, so Alice and I have, we bought this property in the year 2000. and,
Excuse me, folks, please. Thank you.
And we have been looking at, last year, Bear Hill Conservancy purchased Don Cutter's land, which abuts us. And we actually made a gift to the trust to help make that happen. And we've become interested in giving away some of the property. And so basically the discussion here is potentially a lot between the Dorchester Road and the old Dorchester Road, which would be subdivided. And the question is it a buildable lot? Because if we give it, say, to the town or to a land trust, if it's a buildable lot, the valuation is relatively high. And the tax write-off carries the cost of
Mhm.
all the work we have to do. If it's not, it doesn't really carry.
Mhm.
So,
So you put a conservation easement on it?
was that?
You put a conservation easement on it?
And yes, and what Rosalie Cutter gave a conservation easement to the town, which is attached, back in 1999.
Here, I can, actually, I've not had a chance to give, I just got your packet in the mail today, so.
Oh, you did? Okay. I emailed it and.
Was there, should be 5 there? I'm sorry.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
anybody else need one?
I'm good.
Okay, so basically there's 4 points. One is give away the 16 acres. Second is there's some wetlands that we would also like to give away, that put in conservation. The third item is just a heads up. We should be coming back at some point to relocate the right-of-way that goes up to the Bear Hill Conservancy land. And then I have a question about how many acres we're being taxed on. I don't know whether that's,
Yeah, that's something you need to talk to Dina Cutting
probably doesn't go.
in the town office.
So, you know, page 2 is a color picture of the acre of our lot. And you can see that where it says on the right 17 plus or minus acres, I've given you a drawing of that. There's an existing barn, and we would keep 1 acre under that barn footprint. Then I believe that we have some high ground that constitute an area that one could build on, but our plan really isn't to build. It's to put it in conservation by way of gift to the trust or the town. What I did today is in the conservation, in the easement from Rosalie, which is page 3, it describes 600 feet. And it says there's a plan by Ken LeClaire. Okay, and so I went to North Haverhill today, and I went to Registry of Deeds, and I got the plan. And we printed it out, and here's the plan, but guess what? Which is the plan that's referenced. The portion of the road that's the subject of this easement is not shown on the plan.
So how does the road get in the easement?
I think when Rosalie, when they wanted to give the property to Vermont Academy, I think Don Cutter left it in trust for Vermont Academy and for Rosalie Cutter together. And I think in order to then sell it, the town asked for a road easement.
I think there was actually, there was a larger parcel that was subdivided, and the back acreage had no road frontage, so 600 feet of the front lot was reserved under a lot size average in subdivision to basically account for the road front, the necessary road frontage for that back lot. I can show you.
So it's just a set aside.
Yeah, this is
So that can't be.
a different plan. This would be the back lot that we've done, Cutters. This is the section of road that was set aside for this
Right,
subdivision.
so it can't be used for frontage for a
Right.
subdivision lot.
Right.
Yep. Got that. Okay.
So one of the question is, do we have a buildable lot that can be subdivided?
Where's the little lot that you're asking
Oh,
about?
that is this section between the Dorchester and the old Dorchester Road. This is about 17 acres,
Uh-huh.
okay? This,
And how much frontage would it have, take away the 600?
well, see, take away, when I measure, and this is the thing I can't find, when I measure from the 600, and both on this map and on the drawing that Elizabeth Kilmark's prepared, it looks like we have a little more than 1,200
Mm-hmm.
feet from the easement to the eastern border,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And so that was the first thing I wanted to look at, how much road frontage do we have? And I did read the regulations, and even though the Cutters acquired a lot of lots, if we bought it, it becomes one lot, I think. Even though the history shows they bought a number of parcels.
I think they were merged in the past, yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's the question.
So you're just asking whether or not the 17 acres is a buildable lot?
Yeah, and there's a lot of work we would have to do in order to, if you wanted to build, for example.
But the 17 acres isn't a separate lot, right? It's actually.
Right, it's part of the 67
Right.
acre.
That's right.
So you couldn't subdivide it unless you had the proper amount of road frontage.
Right, and that was where, you can take a look at my version of the map, I took Elizabeth's scale and put it.
She's got it.
Yeah, but I put.
Oh,
it
I see.
on-
Okay, well, so if it's a buildable lot, if it meets the
If it has a
zoning,
road from,
the zoning
And
requirements.
the remainder lot would also have to ensure
Right.
that there's 600 feet for that lot.
It says that there's like 855 from the front to the intersection of the old and the new Dorchester Road. What's the frontage there?
600.
600, okay. So this lot has it, but this does that, so. It looks like it. Well, I
Well,
don't
there's
know.
there's 855 here, this is
Right.
more than.
No, no,
So
no,
that's why he's trying to show
they gotta
the
take
scale.
away 600,
Oh, right.
Still, they should be 650.
maybe, yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
That's what he's trying to
Yeah,
show.
that needs to be.
Actually, I have to confirm that, is that,
Measured.
yeah, we need to confirm that it's still in the East Lyme.
It is in the, I got the zoning map out,
Okay.
it's all in the East Lyme
Okay.
district.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's 600.
And then, this is not a quote-free subdivision, because there's been changes,
Yep.
so lots of records, so then, how many acres does that need to be in that district to take away the conservation of the district?
The minimum lot size is still going to be 15.
Right, and what would reduce that, like any wetlands?
I haven't looked at any of the,
Right, so we need to test to make sure that you have at least 15 buildable acres, is that? Assuming you get the geometry stuff, then we look at the character of the land.
Okay, so that all 15 acres have to be buildable?
They have to be not conservation overlay district lands, I mean, there's this portion of those, I mean, they're not 100% excluded unless they're like water. So, but if they're ag soils, there might be a reduction in the
Steep
actual
slopes.
acreage.
so David can,
I can help you
Run
with,
that
we
for
can
you,
try to
yeah.
Okay.
He'll
so-
work you through.
I mean, like, I walk that lane, the woodcocker down there, so I walk it pretty often. And there are parts of it that are wet, like I said. But there's high ground. If you look on the east side there, up near the old Dorchester Road, there's very high ground there. I think there's an old foundation up there too.
Is that what you've indicated here, or is that the barn? Like the old
Well,
building?
you can see the barn, I've drawn that about where I think it is.
So
yeah.
it's near 17,
Right.
yeah.
And then we have, I drew 150 feet back from the old Dorchester Road. I don't know if that's the setback that's required,
Old Dorchester Road is not a road, so.
but it's not a road, so.
Yeah, so it's just a property line setback you have to worry about, and that could be a,
35.
is a side setback?
Side setback,
Yeah,
and
it's not a,
double check east
30
line.
or 35.
yeah. So that's just a side setback, you don't need.
So it's gonna be 150 for east line.
For the side setbacks too?
Okay, so if it's 150, 150, there's a very small spot there where.
Yep.
But it's high and it seems to be high and dry.
Right. Well, the question is the acreage thing.
Well, I think he'll have to work with David.
Right, so my question is, so if you didn't have enough acreage because of deductions based on the wetlands, couldn't you annex part of the 67-acre piece over to create a
Sure.
building lot there? So that, you can just solve that problem
Right.
depending upon how much extra acreage you
We
need.
could borrow from there. We also
Yeah.
have about 20 acres that truly is, well, some of it's dry, but some of it's wetland.
I see,
Most of it's
yeah.
wetland.
Yep,
And we could give that, I mean, that could be added to it.
So you have flexibility there with
Absolutely.
your acre.
mhm,
I mean, the end result is we think that our property would, the farm with about 50 acres right now, if it's surrounded by conserved land, would be fine.
mhm.
And if we could make this gift, and we would like to do it, for obvious reasons.
Mhm.
And of course, we'd like to do it this year if possible.
Well, it sounds like there's a geometry issue to figure out, and then to look at an acreage thing, and then you need to get a surveyor if you need to do a, new boundary that it couldn't be along the old Dorchester Road.
Okay.
And,
So the geometry,
Yeah.
you mean just the measurement of the road frontage, or?
And the
Yeah,
overlay.
you need a surveyor to actually figure out the road frontage, make sure that it,
we have at least 600 feet.
Yep.
Okay, so that would be, the first thing to figure out, right? And the second thing to figure out, well, if the land is, if parts of it are too wet, we can simply borrow from the other property.
Exactly, yep,
So that would work, so that it boils down to road frontage.
yep, well, there's that, and then to make sure that this 67-acre lot, once it gets carved off a little bit, it still meets that 15 acres also. I don't know, throw away the wetlands, I mean, maybe there's enough, but just,
Right.
David can run that for you as well, just to make sure that this is gonna be fine.
Yeah, that lot is, 2/3 of it is in mountain and forest, and
Yep.
the lower, the northern third of it is in East Lyme.
Well, whatever that needs to be.
Yeah, all of that's gotta be
Yeah.
in the calculation.
Are there any steep slopes?
Okay,
I
so,
have to,
so the plan is validate the road frontage,
Mhm.
and then, I can work with David to determine the amount of land that's not wet that needs to be included in the gift.
Mhm.
Right.
Is there any benefit to giving these two properties separately?
Benefit in terms of what?
Well, if we're giving it to the town, for example, is there any, would the town have any interest in owning these properties?
that would be a select board.
Yeah.
That's the Conservation Commission
Okay.
to start,
Conservation Commission, yes.
Yeah.
and then if they say yes, then it's just the select board. But,
Right.
I don't know that, except for we'd have to create conservation lots probably, because if this is all wet, it's not gonna be minimum lot size compliant, so.
Right, so I don't think that
Might have to be.
the wet lot, I don't think you'd get enough acreage out of that to,
So we would borrow some, there is dry.
Well,
Oh.
I understand you can give that away though, isn't that the frontage for the 67-acre lot?
that would be the,
Yeah, you can't do that.
you're gonna be, you need your road frontage from the,
Yeah, I don't think
the
you can
western-
give it away.
We
You
couldn't-
put, you put an easement on it, but you can't give this away, because this frontage needs to go with this lot. So it can't be a separate lot. You can
Which
give it,
the,
so this frontage needs to remain with
this
this lot.
frontage up here remains with
The big lot.
The big
the
lot.
big lot.
Right, so you can't create a separate lot, to give away, because this would be then non-conforming, you need to have that lot frontage, or the road frontage for that lot. But you could put an easement on that, which maybe the town would want, or somebody else, so.
But if you have enough road frontage here, then 600 of it can apply to, I mean, this whole section could be one gift, including, you know, the wetlands and dry land here and 16 acres here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you're only gonna have one lot,
it's only one lot,
yeah,
that would be the way to give it.
okay.
It's, if that's how it works out, yeah, I mean, if that's, works out with what David.
Well, that's gonna find, it's gonna find enough dry land for the gift,
Yeah,
okay? And then, thank you for spending the time. The thing we
that's
have,
why we're here.
then the process we have to go through, if it's a gift, do we go through all of the things like perk testing and,
If you're trying to take it as a, if you want the board to approve a subdivision as a buildable lot, then you would have to approve that it is a buildable lot. I mean, that's the, you know, the board can approve a conservation lot, but that would be it would be,
but that valuation's gonna be different.
right.
We don't need a septic design, you just need to have a, person go out and say that you can get a state-approved septic there.
Okay, who would do that? That would be,
You would need to get a soil scientist or a septic designer to do that,
can you help me with that?
Yep.
Okay,
and, yeah,
okay, it would be a septic designer.
or a.
Yeah, they would just be able to go out and do a perk test to find the,
Soil
Test it
scientist would
and-
be.
to test it, yeah, to make sure that there's
An area.
an area that they feel can support a septic system.
Okay,
And, you know, state looks at about a 4,000 square foot area as a,
and that could be over here where we have dry land too,
yes.
which is, okay, so they can check here and they can check over here, it doesn't matter, it's all part of the same lot.
Right.
Right.
Got it?
So on this 67-acre lot, what are these little buildings that are?
You mean on the right, on the east side?
Yeah,
Well, that's a house, the main house, our driveway, and then there's a barn. We
okay,
We
so,
acquired 3.67 acres to add some setback.
okay, so I'm now confused, because that's a buildable lot, and then that needs to have frontage.
Right, that's our existing house.
Right, and then you need to have, you're trying to find another buildable lot.
That's right. So
Yeah.
the other buildable lot would be something like the 17 acres plus some of the
Right,
67
67,
acres.
presumably down near the wetland,
Yeah,
yeah,
and not including the wetlands.
right.
Okay. That's fine. The only other matter is there is a right-of-way right now that goes up to the Bear Hill property. I discussed it with David Roby, it would be of interest to them to have their own entrance off the old Dorchester Road and to us to reroute the right-of-way, so I've drawn that.
Mhm.
That would be a matter that would come up later. I don't know if there's any,
I don't think it's anything that the planning board,
I don't think the
No, that's
planning
when
board.
you guys
Yeah.
accept that, it needs to show that this is gonna continue to be a shared access way when we do the subdivision.
because your access comes off of the Dorchester Road, across the 17
That's
acres.
correct,
Right.
yes. So
And
we
so
would
you would-
keep a right-of-way.
You would need to keep that right of way, and then that is also going to be the access from the Dorchester Road for
For the buildable lot.
or no, for the Bear Hills lot, because that's where that's,
Oh, yes, unless we agree to change it, in which case it.
well, but the problem is that, you would lose any buildability on the back lot because the old Dorchester Road is not a road.
Understood.
So you can't, even though I know people are using it, you cannot guarantee access. So the access comes, the guaranteed access is from the Dorchester Road.
Correct, yeah, I agree.
So,
But the back lot, which Bear Hill acquired, that's that was not buildable, because it doesn't have access. It has a right of way, but it's,
Well, it has the right of way, and then that 600 feet of reserved frontage was so it is my understanding that that lot is buildable.
okay, and maybe the reserve, maybe the easement was to keep that from being built.
No, that the easement was to allow it to be buildable. The 600 feet of road frontage was reserved at the time of that subdivision
Okay.
to go with this back lot. And that gives it road frontage, even though it's not,
Not the 67 acres.
no, it would be the one that Dave Roby bought.
Yes, yes, okay, I didn't know that. Okay. Well, I think that's it, we just have to determine the road frontage and,
Maybe your
determine,
acreages.
Right.
septic to the designer, somebody to, and then modify the boundaries.
Yep.
And come back with a proposed.
With plan.
subdivision.
Right.
Yep.
Gotcha. Great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, the big picture is, that this whole thing is gonna be a charitable contribution to, by giving an easement or land to somebody, you might wanna be sure that you have somebody to give it to before you go through all this.
Yeah.
You know, you could make an
Right.
appointment
The
with
other-
the Conservation Commission and make sure they want it.
Right.
Or, I don't know, if there's another conservation organization you'd wanna work with, you know.
I've had discussions a while ago with Peg Mearns.
At Upper Valley
Valley.
Land,
More recently with David Roby,
right,
with their Hill Conservancy.
Right.
And talked to Don Cutter, and he suggested maybe the town, maybe
Right.
the town.
well, start with the commission, they may say this is the best thing, but then if they say it's not the best thing, I don't want you to spend all this money setting up
Right.
this
You
deal.
wanna have,
that-
you wanna have
without
something
a
lined
recipient.
up
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So the commission.
before you're going through
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so who do I talk to?
Blake Allison is the chair of the Conservation Commission.
I'm sorry?
Blake Allison.
Blake Allison, okay. And this is a Lyme Conservation.
Yep, and his email is, it's just conservation@lymenh.gov.
Okay, well, many thanks for spending this time.
Sure.
I just have that's our only copy of that firm files, I don't wanna lose that.
Yeah, and that one's important, because if you measure the scale, it looks like we have enough road frontage. Yeah. Great.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
many thanks.
All right, so is the public, is everybody here for the senior housing discussion? All right, so let's skip to that. And, is there any objection? So, and why don't we open it up to the public right away unless there's objection from the board? And, thank you for coming and speak. Yeah.
I support whatever can be done to promote senior housing in Lyme.
Thank you, and thank you for coming.
Pretty much ditto.
Okay.
I think that when we started the Aging in Place Committee,
We were much younger when we started.
we were so much younger then. But that was really only maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, so.
That's about right.
About right. So, but the interest in some kind of either congregate or the opportunity to have condominiums or the opportunity to have some way to downsize and maintain some independence and be a part of the community that people have grown to love, many for many, many years and some a little shorter. But that interest was there then, and I only hear it growing now as our population ages. And so I would just strongly encourage the planning board to consider any opportunities to provide that opportunity within our community. I think that people are leaving our community because they can't find that opportunity here. Despite our best efforts to provide supports for folks and to have a wonderful volunteer network of people who really do promote people staying in their homes and enjoying where they live, it becomes harder and harder to maintain a large home, and having the ability to do this would be wonderful, so.
Well-
And as I get older, I appreciate it even more, so.
Well, thank you, and especially appreciate it, because I know your firsthand experience is very valuable, both what you've done, and for us to be able to get that feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious if anyone has had any discussions with any real estate developers about what they might consider doing. Because without their capital, I don't think anything's gonna happen. So to me, it's all about, is there interest? Yes, there appears to be interest within Lyme, so is there now a developer willing to step up and meet that interest? And so it's always been kind of the wrench in the system here in Lyme as far as I can see, so.
But I think also, just as a, additional comment, that there's not a lot of developers who are interested in coming into town because of the fact that it takes a while to get it through, and so the barriers are there, and folks are just not interested in fighting that. They can go elsewhere and do it cheaper with less time.
Right.
The time wasted or spent,
Quite.
depending
Well,
upon your
Trying to understand
point
what
of
those,
view.
trying to understand what those barriers are by talking to developers might be the first step, so.
Can I just
Okay, yeah,
interject?
please.
I work in the town of Hanover, and the town of Hanover gave Twin Pines Housing land. The town of Hanover did all the site work, and Twin Pines has gone out and gotten, federal money to do that project. And that has been 3 years sitting there, and they have not dug a hole yet for their building.
Mm.
So it is not for a community that's not wanting that. These things often take quite a bit of time. And with a very generous community, with the town's public works department hooking up to water and sewer, which Lyme doesn't have, okay? So it's a major deal, even when you have all those things going in your favor. So I don't think that that's necessarily the impediment here, but look at all the leverage that the town put in with the money, the infrastructure development, and, and they're gonna be continuing to support that development, with more public works support, so they don't have to do any site work. It's,
Yeah, no,
Amazing.
we know it's challenging, I mean, and we had that guy from Thetford, who
Mhm.
I think is still, 15 years later, is still trying to.
Still trying to get it
Still
going.
trying.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to get done. What I'm hoping to do is to make it easier, and look for ways to make it easier and to encourage it.
Mhm.
That's what I'm hoping to do.
John, is it worth, I had sent the note out to the board, listing goals that you encouraged me to write up.
Well, actually, I didn't. What I was encouraging you, but what I was trying to encourage on the board was to actually come up with language. I guess you interpreted that as goals, but I was asking you, because you were talking about the existing proposal, to basically rewrite it in a way that you thought fit. Because I'd like to actually get moving. I think the goals are pretty obvious. We want to encourage senior housing.
And what might that look like?
Well, you tell me.
Well, okay.
Let me take
Yeah.
it back to the thing that I've been talking about for years, is I wrote a proposal as a very general thing, and then I'm asking for people to suggest modifications or other ideas. But I'd like to get the thing moving beyond goals to very specific suggestions for what we can do. I'd like to move right to language. Or if you have a completely different conception from this proposal, then bring that with real language that could be voted on.
So, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking that we have a bunch of people here who are really interested, and I think one of the things we sometimes get hung up on is the definition of senior housing,
Mhm.
which your 10 goals did not address.
Mhm.
So I wondered if what John has written, if we could talk about that, at least to get some agreement about, like, what does that mean, senior housing, right?
Yeah,
Would that be a
that would be
positive set?
constructive.
So do you wanna just read that, since you're the author, or do you have a copy? So, and just, it's a good time to discuss this, because if people don't think this is, like, this should be our
Yeah,
definition of
so
senior housing, let's at least get
This,
that.
this is about maybe 3 years old, I don't know, so, that's not the whole thing, is it?
No, I have the other
I got
piece.
the whole thing.
Okay.
Here's the other side.
All right, so this will be a dramatic reading.
You don't have to do the introduction, do you?
I don't know.
That's all about, that's about.
Yeah, so the introduction is simply saying, I'll just read the
Okay,
emphasize.
no, go ahead.
This is less a proposal than a provisional starting point that can serve as a basis for discussion and more in-depth analysis. So I used very, specific language as if it was going to be voted on, but this is just a starting point. So I'll just read under Article 3, Senior Housing Zoning District. The boundaries of the senior housing district are shown on the Lyme zoning map and are identical to those of the Lyme Common zoning district. So in normal language, it's in the Lyme Common zoning district. We subsequently talked about maybe also the commercial district south of town, but this is what's in here. The objective of the senior housing zoning district is to promote appropriately scaled opportunities for housing dedicated to seniors that is within the central compact area of town and therefore more accessible than elsewhere to its associated services and active community life. New or converted buildings in this district shall be architecturally consistent with the established character of the area. Senior housing, the objective, it is important that Lyme provide opportunities for the housing of its economically diverse senior population that is centrally located and accessible to the downtown businesses, services, and the active community life found there. Being centrally located is crucial not only to promote accessibility for senior residents, but also to avoid sprawl, traffic congestion, and their associated costs elsewhere. This Article 13 provides certain exceptions to the other provisions of the zoning ordinance, as well as potential bonus provisions in order to enable the creation and maintenance of a centrally located stock of senior housing. Let's go to anything that you want to say about that, yeah.
I'm not sure what you mean by senior housing from that definition.
Yeah.
In other words,
I
are
think
you putting, is it age restricted? You gotta be
Yes,
65?
I think it's addressed later.
60 or something.
Yeah, it's addressed later. In this, it's 60 or over, but that's provisional.
Yeah, but why would you wanna put an age on it? Shouldn't it be more design oriented? Because, there's people that retire at 50, that are looking forward and have their kids out of the house, they might be interested in that. So, to me, and I'm a Florida boy, so I've seen this go down a lot of ways very badly when you put age restrictions on it. To me, it more should be a design thing, so it's designed for folks like not having stairs and things like that. As
Not
they
having
age.
what?
Stairs.
Yeah,
It should be more design oriented.
so you're
Rather
saying
than
that
age-oriented.
anybody could live in this place?
Right, and you can like restrict children and things like that, okay, but to me,
You
the
can't,
age.
I don't think you can restrict children
I don't know if you can.
unless it's age limited. You can't.
Okay.
And that's and there are federal laws associated with that, and you can't do that.
So
That's
if you
my
had a
understanding.
person who's older, who's married to somebody who's younger with children, do you want to not enable them to live together in a senior housing thing? And so we as a group thought, well, no, they should be able to bring their younger spouse and the child with them. But at least one person in the household would need to
Right.
have age.
So I'll keep
eligibility.
reading along, because some of this might be covered, or might not. All right, we're all the way to, definition of senior, yeah. Okay, senior housing is hereby defined as housing within the Lyme Senior Housing District as described on Article 3, and is housing where at least 80, you crossed that out, but anyway, is 85% rounded off to the nearest whole number of the residents are 60 years of age or older. That would allow younger spouses or whatever in there. And children. 60 years of age or older. Any senior housing proposal must conform to the standards of the site plan review regulations. Yeah,
Is that for the whole development, or is that per dwelling unit, that 85%?
that was for the whole, that would be for the whole thing.
Okay, so so that could prevent a person, say it's a person over 60 with a dependent adult, but not, somebody in their 30s, child. So they might not be able to move in because there's already two other people
Well,
with younger children who live there.
Then let's suggest the
Well,
language.
I'm just trying to run through scenarios.
Right, I think, I mean, that's why we need to run through it. That's not the intention.
So it seems like what we really care about is that every dwelling unit has at least one person over 60, if that's our cutoff, or maybe it's 55, but we want one older person in every dwelling unit. Otherwise, you could have units that were actually a younger family, as long as they were the ones that made up the 15%.
Right, I don't know, I think in one of the drafts, there were also provisions for, you could get a bonus for workforce housing, and that wouldn't be
I see.
age restricted.
Right.
A senior housing does not qualify for a designation as workforce housing.
Right.
Okay,
Okay, so I think that we just need to figure out if it's for the whole project or per.
well,
one
if you're,
unit.
John,
Yeah.
why don't you keep reading?
Yeah, okay.
Because, we can get hung up on that
Right.
particular definition.
but
There's a lot more that you
let's
said.
just remember that
Yeah,
as something to
yeah,
address.
Okay.
You're enjoying the reading? Okay. Dimensional controls and provisions. For the purposes of this Article 13, a senior housing proposal must be within the senior housing zoning district as defined under Article 13. If the planning board finds that a proposal is consistent with the site plan review standards, it may modify certain dimensional controls, frontage, setback, lot width, maximum building footprint, and maximum lot coverage as appropriate in view of design, location, and character. New multi-dwelling senior buildings may be allowed solely under this article so long as they meet all the requirements of this Article 13. Bonus provision. All right, any proposal that is to be developed within a new or existing building of a minimum of 5,000 square feet may qualify for up to a maximum of 12 dwelling units if the following conditions are met. And actually, this first one, A, should probably go up above because that would be required anyway. The applicant must demonstrate that a water supply and septic system can be built and maintained according to state requirements. B, any senior housing developed under this Article 13 shall not be converted to another use for a minimum of 20 years without the approval of the planning board. C, a minimum of 15% of the dwelling units or 2 dwelling units must be affordable under the definitions of New Hampshire Housing Authority Act, RSA 204C56. D, no more than one such development shall be permitted within 500 feet of the nearest boundary of another, and all such developments must be architecturally consistent with the established character of the area. E, all other provisions of the zoning ordinance as well as all other town and state regulations shall apply.
Yeah, I have some questions and comments. One of the assertions is that senior housing has less impact on town services than other kinds of housing.
One of the assertions where?
I think it was probably in the preface.
Well, I'm just reading this, I mean, the
Is
language.
that,
It's not, I don't think it's in here.
okay, is the notion that senior housing has less impact simply because there's no children? I mean, I didn't write that, John, that,
Right, what?
that proposal.
Well, without reading the proposal, I would say most of the scenarios for development are, you're talking about risk and cost to the, in this case, to the school. You're talking about children.
I mean, I don't
I mean,
have it from-
why don't you tell me what you wanna say? Cause I'm not really sure where you're going.
Okay. I think it's the preface says, senior housing has less impact on town services.
Right, this was written 3 years ago.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe there's no justification for that. Let me move on to my next question. The max gross floor area in the Lyme Common District is 6,000 square feet. Is that right, Dave?
Yes.
So if you built a 12-unit housing unit, the largest building it could go in is 6,000 square feet.
Okay,
If you subtract 20% for circulation, that's hallways, stairways, that kind of thing, you're down to 4,800 square feet.
right.
6,000 minus 20% is 4,800.
So what would you suggest?
Hold it, he says he wants, you can modify that in 13.3, it says.
Okay, let me come back to
You can
that.
get rid of
Let me
that.
come back to
Okay,
that.
So-
all right.
what-
And so what I understand you saying is that these are 400 square foot units.
That's not what I'm saying. What,
What? I mean-
well, let me answer you.
Yeah.
This was written as a starting point. If you would like to change them, suggest the change. What I'm trying to get people on the board to do is, if you have a different figure, you have different, just bring them. And
I have a very different view of senior housing.
then bring
John,
it.
all right, then I would like to read I'd like to talk about the 10 goals that I sent out. I have copies, I don't know if everybody's had a chance to see them. But I have a few copies here. The last time we spoke about senior housing, I understood the request to come up with goals for senior
No,
housing.
that was not the request. The
Well-
request that I made was for you and anybody else to bring in language, real language, for an amendment, a proposal.
We don't even know what the goals are.
I know what the goals are.
Is this objective section?
Yes.
the goal?
So is it for?
Look, I wrote this from my point
Yeah,
of view.
that's
If you
great.
have a different point of view, bring language.
I'd like to find out if the people in the audience and if the town thinks that some of the things that I asked are reasonable.
Go ahead.
Okay. The goals that I wrote down, senior housing, which actually I think should be housing for seniors, because the research I've read and the conferences that I've gone to say that senior-only housing is not the right answer. It's not as good, it's not as powerful, not as supportive as more mixed-age housing. But I want housing for Lyme residents. I
Well,
want,
so hold on, so what, I heard you, I thought I heard you say two different things. So you don't want it age restricted?
I want to describe what would be good housing for seniors.
But
And then-
I'm not following what you just said. Did you say that you don't want it age restricted?
I want to know why, I want to know good reasons for age restricting it.
But what's your opinion?
I think this would work fine for lots of different ages. If.
What's
and-
the, you mean this, or?
No, what I'm,
What's your-
the goals that I'm talking about.
So you're interested in mixed age?
I've always been, you know, John, that I've always been
But
interested in
I'm
mixed age.
trying to be,
And I'm saying, people in town have told me that mixed age is better than senior only. So,
Okay.
let me keep going because,
Okay, I just wanna be clear as we go along. So you're suggesting non-senior housing, it's not senior restricted housing?
If the board wants to, set those limits, that's good. I'm saying what I think is useful. I think it should be singles, I think it should be couples, I think it should be people that wanna downsize, I think it should be for people that just don't wanna maintain a big house, they wanna,
But not age restricted?
let's say it's age restricted for now, and we'll come back to why that's important.
Okay.
I'll say that. Wants to be houses, it wants to be clustered units, apartments, if you will. I mean, I heard Ellen say that it wants to be apartments. I think it wants to be units of different sizes. They can be studios, they can be 1 and 2, maybe even 3-bedroom units.
Oh, yeah, Dave.
Yeah, this is getting back to what I said. It really needs to be designed, it needs to be design oriented from the very beginning on who you're trying to attract. So if you design it certain ways, those are the type of people you're going to attract. You know, single-family homes attract families. Other design elements attract other types of people. So rather than restricting it by age, if you restrict it by its design from the very beginning, it makes a lot more sense, I think, in terms of what Lyme.
So you're also looking for mixed age? Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so that's, okay, so both of you, right? Okay.
So, I mean, continuing on, I think the ordinance should permit a range of unit sizes, it should permit a range of amenities, garages, additional storage space, maybe a common.
So let me add,
Yeah.
what both of you are saying, and, I mean, there's a convergence here about mixed ages. So, you know, my thinking about this came out of the aging in place discussions and the need for senior housing. That's what I'm interested in. If we do something where there are no age restrictions, we're most likely not going to significantly address senior housing issue.
I totally disagree with that.
Okay.
If you design it correctly to where it's attractive to seniors, then they're gonna be interested in purchasing or moving in, okay? If you design it for other groups of people in mind, then those other types of people will be interested in it. This is what all the research out there, and you know, I haven't looked at a lot of it, but I looked at some of it, seems to indicate that it's all about the design and who you attract. Every time you start putting age things on, as I said earlier, and as was mentioned up here, you run into all sorts of if-but scenarios that you probably don't wanna have to deal with as a town of Lyme. That's just kind of my personal opinion. But if you design it correctly.
Yeah, so teach us a little bit about what that design would look like.
I see, this is not my expertise, but this is why I kind of start off the conversation saying, have we talked to developers as to what they think? You know, I think that they should be small. There should be single floor. There should be close by parking, if not some sort of covered parking. Those are just kind of off the top of my head, the things to me that would attract a senior clientele.
So why not do that and have senior housing? Because, I mean, basically what that is a general development. It's not a senior housing development. It may be built to accommodate.
You might attract some 20-somethings that want to live in Lyme, and you
Right.
know, I don't see that as a particular problem.
I'm not
I mean,
saying, talking about it as a problem, but it's not addressing senior housing.
Well, what we found, for example, in Florida, is not all seniors want to live just among other seniors. And so there seems to be a lot of folks that would like to have kind of mixed ages in there. But you're not gonna, I mean, they don't necessarily want to live in a single-family home in those type of neighborhoods where there's a zillion kids running around.
Exactly.
But they like to live in a place where there's different types of people, different age groups.
All right, let me give other people a chance. You were first.
I was basically, I have a totally different concept of what this is.
Good.
many of us who live in this town want to stay in this town, have been here for a very long time. We've gone through and we've seen our taxes rise, and that's a consideration of why many of us want to downsize. And in my estimation, housing for seniors should be for seniors, not children, not mixed
Right.
ages.
Right.
Because people of mixed ages can find other places to live. But seniors are very restricted as they get older with fixed incomes and the ability to get around, and they might have neighbors that can be more of assistance, not having, families are only concerned about families, but seniors are concerned about each other. So it'd be a community kind of help and respect for, you're now reached a certain age where you might have restrictions, you might need your neighbor's help, you might, it would be more of a camaraderie of people that are experiencing the same thing. And as we get older, we know our ability to have homes that are affordable become less and less. So people that are younger have incomes, have resources, have other places they can live. To then infiltrate into the area that are meant for seniors, you're just totally blowing the whole purpose of having seniors in. That's only my point. And then if you're thinking of down the road, you can change the mix, then you're right back where you were before. Might as well be an apartment building for mixed people. And the seniors are now, again, left out. So that's my point.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you said it was economically diverse and affordable, housing. Rich, in number 7 in the goals, I did read them before.
Mm-hmm.
It said Grafton County, the mean purchase price is below $292,500.
Yes.
If you don't have the money for, purchasing a house, but you want affordable,
Right.
that's important, and just to, have that ability. It says, rental unit for a family of 3, I mean, that doesn't seem like a senior situation to me,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
is below $1,210 per month.
Right.
And so if you get into the affordable, it would drop much less.
Right,
For
so
one person.
the reason I cited those numbers is simply because I didn't want workforce housing to sound scary and to think, oh, this is Section 8 vouchers, this is really low income people. These are,
The workforce,
So-
those are just
Yeah.
lines in the sand where that below, at that level or below are designated workforce housing. And there are various reasons for that. One of them is legal, that in New Hampshire, you have to have a reasonable supply of workforce housing. But it's not a stigma or something.
No, and workforce is different from affordable
It is,
housing.
Yes,
it
so,
is,
yeah.
yes.
so John, you asked for specific things that the ordinance should do. I think this kind of housing should be permitted by rights.
So why don't you explain to everybody what you mean by right?
Okay, so, the Lyme ordinance has basically has a table that says these uses are permitted in these districts, in the Lyme Common District, in the Rural District, in the Commercial District. And whatever it is we come up with that we define as senior housing needs to be permitted by right. What that means is that you walk in and you say, I would like to do this, and there needs to be a site plan review. You gotta know where the septic's going, you gotta know where the water's going, and what about the driveway and those things. But the developer, we're talking about a developer here, person that's gonna make housing for more than 1 or 2 people is called a developer. That's their job. They put up a lot of money, they buy the land, they hire the architects and the engineers, they finance all this stuff, and then they hope to sell the units. If we want conjugate units, if we want units clustered close to each other on a single property, that's gonna take a developer. One of the things the developer needs to know, and we were talking about this just now, I forget who said, maybe it was you, Ellen, that it's a barrier for a developer to say, do you think Lyme is gonna let me do this? If a developer has to ask that question, they're gonna say, I'll just go someplace else and not do it.
Yeah, so,
Because I don't need to
so
hassle.
to that point, if I may,
Mhm.
this says if it's essentially an agreement with site plan review, and the other thing it says, which I wouldn't take out, is all other provisions of this zoning ordinance as well as all other town and state regulations shall apply. So where do you see a contradiction?
So I believe it's economically infeasible to do it in the Lyme Common District.
Okay,
I think the build-out analysis the board has done points to
so
what is a small amount of infill development.
61 units is not small.
It's not economically feasible either, Vicky. That,
So what side, you were saying because of the size limitations at 5,000 square feet, so what size would make it, in your thinking, economically feasible?
I think this is where we look to the developer to understand what,
But what would you suggest?
I would suggest that it be.
Did you want to say? Were you moving your fingers?
let him
I would
finish.
suggest that it be as large as the parcel permits,
Uh-huh.
and not constrain it to the Lyme Common District.
So what would you include?
Well, so frankly, I'm gonna tip my hand here and say, if we allowed planned development in the rural district on Route 10, all of these goals would be feasible.
Which includes your property.
Does? It
Okay,
includes a lot
I
of
have a
properties.
little problem with
I've
that.
got a big problem.
I have a
Mr.
big
Chair,
problem with that.
And that I don't.
We're
think it-
dealing with senior housing here. I mean, that's what this discussion is about. And I really don't want to make it, even with the appearance that it's benefiting you.
That's a problem.
It's a big problem,
Huge problem.
really big problem.
John, so,
I'm just gonna move on for the moment. Brett, you.
I, as everybody probably knows, have a fair number of rentals around. And
I've heard that.
most of those rentals that are done now are all done to accommodate handicapped senior people. And I'm not discounting what you have to say about design it so only seniors want to live there, but I can tell you just about anybody ends up living there. Some are seniors. We have 2 people that are waiting when we get time to build houses that will accommodate them in old age. I think that town needs to be careful with the Lyme Common area. They were sent a letter by the state of New Hampshire, I wanna say 30 years ago, probably now, that if they increase the sewage loading on the back of the common, for example, they'll be forced to put in a sewage treatment plant. And I think that may have some rather dire ramifications financially.
Well, just let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I mean, I always assumed that no matter what we've heard, you probably know better. No, I mean, seriously.
No.
I mean, no, seriously, you know a lot. But we did talk to the, what is it called, the Lyme Water Municipal. So we kind of went through that, and at the time, it was Mike Mundy and Colin Robinson. And there did seem to be sufficient.
Okay, well, and a lot of this stuff gets lost over the years. I mean,
Right.
these letters
I know
disappear
that.
into
I know that,
oblivion,
yeah.
so. But be that as it may, some study, if you will, about nitrates loading, which ultimately is the problem,
Okay,
might address that issue.
okay.
I think that, there are very limited parcels within the immediate common area that would support the nitrate loading at the very least, but, you talk about a 6,000 square foot building, I think somebody might have mentioned. But the the smaller houses that I've done are like 750 square feet. That's kind of a minimum. And it's not really quite enough space when you figure nice size handicap bathroom, 1 bedroom, and a bedroom for a caretaker.
What would you consider?
I think 1,000 feet becomes kind of 1,000 to 1,200 feet.
Okay.
And then, you know, if you get into a lot of state regulations as soon as you start putting more than 2 units within a building. As far as
The
firewalls
state.
firewalls and so forth. Firewalls, even in a duplex, but I don't believe the town allows duplexes either. Do they?
Well,
As long as one owner,
yeah.
one is owner occupied.
Yeah, so there you're kind of stuck there. They did away with the accessory dwellings, which was one of the ways.
No.
Well,
No, we have accessory dwellings, the state actually changed them and made them worse than what we had.
Yeah.
But you can have.
But an owner occupied.
In most
you said.
cases, if you have, you can have owner occupied with, we didn't have owner occupied before.
Right, exactly.
The state made it owner occupied and they have a fly problem.
Should I kill it?
No, don't kill it, just take it outside.
Take it outside.
Needs a horse.
So we have, now because of the state, you have to have owner occupied, but you can have a second unit in that building, or you can have an external dwelling unit.
If you're talking about somebody wanting to build something like this, it won't be owner occupied. So whether you find an accommodation to allow people to build, say, a duplex, which would, it would no longer be an
Well,
accessory.
one of the things we actually talked about last time at here was possibly that if somebody was gonna do senior housing, we could do away with the owner occupied requirement.
Yeah,
And I think that would,
yeah,
well, but yeah, that's state for accessory dwelling unit, but this is for senior housing. So we could get around that, I assume, with senior housing.
yeah. I'm just, and I'm not, you know.
You're sharing your challenges
Yeah,
that you've
Yeah,
had.
yeah.
exactly.
But I'm saying that in that spirit, I mean, does that make it better if it's not owner occupied?
Obviously, would have to be not owner occupied.
So that's something we could do,
Yeah,
we could try and do,
and
if it's senior housing.
yeah, and I think you should, if you're trying to be within the Lyme Common District, you're gonna probably have to address an increase in square footage as compared to lot size.
Okay.
Does that study of the nitrates ring a bell, David? Is that?
Well before my time.
Yeah, I'm just curious. It'd be interesting to see if we could surface it.
Well, there's something in the subdivision regulations that talk about nitrogen loading. And so we have that, which was about 30 years ago, but I don't remember anything from the state.
I remember a conversation with an engineer that used to live in town here, and he had some knowledge of the whole business that was going on at the
Right.
time.
The good news is septic systems have gotten a lot smarter and smaller,
They have, but it doesn't get you around the nitrates problem.
I understand.
Well, that's good to know.
John, I'd like to come back and talk a little bit about this. I was looking back through my notes, and just 2 years ago this month, you had a senior housing forum.
Right.
And the minutes showed that very many of the same topics came up: multiple unit housing, smaller clustered units and all. The other thing I'm gonna say is that I don't remember at which of the proceedings that Pinnacle had with this board, we were saying we'd like to do co-housing. This board said we would approve your project if it were senior housing. And we were talking about,
Rich should sit down there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think maybe you should sit in the audience.
Yeah, the whole.
Because you're talking
Yeah,
about
I
your
mean,
own thing.
So
It's really, we're really crossing lines here as a member of, as a, serving on this board and bringing up your development, it's a little bit problematic. And we might wanna get legal counsel.
Well, I think Rich should do,
input.
maybe you should sit in the audience and not.
Well, you can't flip-flop, I think, on, and just from
Yeah.
going from the one chair. I mean, I think there's a real technical aspect of where we're at right now.
Yeah.
With
I
it
think we
being a
might
carve-out.
need legal input on this.
Right.
We don't have a proposal in front of us that Rich is bringing to us, so he's not an applicant. He is talking from his personal experience and is certainly advocating for something that would benefit his personal experience or his
Well, that
situation.
becomes a problem.
So, but I don't think that disqualifies him from serving, like, sitting at this table and talking. And
Well,
But
when
you know,
it gets to be
there's not an
when it
application
gets to
here,
be a financial benefit, it does, I mean, I believe it does. But why don't you just go ahead with, and get to your point?
So my point is, this board said 20 units, clustered in much the same way that the Pinnacle project, I'll use the third person, envisioned building. That would be something the board would support if it were senior housing. We chose a different path, but this is not a new idea. This is something that people have been bringing to the board. The board has not found a way to make it possible. And
That's-
so,
The board is taking up senior housing now to make it as possible as we can.
okay, could there be a dozen 1,200 square foot units built, to use Brett's number? Could, with other buildings around,
Where?
common buildings?
Where?
In line. Is that a good thing?
Well, we can discuss it. What's the board's point of view? Or what's, you know,
Ask the audience, would something like that be useful? A dozen?
well, I mean, just asking generally isn't all we have to think about, though. I mean, we have to think about where and how. So, one of the other things that came up last time was the possibility of having something in the commercial district. But what I would like people on the board to do is to, if you want to propose that, put it in language that would be amendable, you know, that we could take to the town. And then we can discuss it, but until it's in real language, it's not gonna be too helpful to speak in generalities. That's why I wrote this up. So it can be attacked, it can be torn apart, other things can be put in there. And that's what I would ask everybody on the board to do. So that's what I was asking you last time, not for goals. And it applies to everybody. If you want to suggest things, put it in language, so that it can be debated as language, because that's what we end up dealing with, not generalities. Yeah,
It seems that there's successful senior housing in downtown Norwich. Could something like that happen in downtown Lyme? Do we know what?
I don't, well, tell me about the place in Norwich.
There must be 20 units in behind Tracy Hall and
Off to-
between Carpenter Street and Main Street, in behind Tracy Hall, where there are, I don't know how many, but I'm thinking 20 units. Small.
Does anybody know?
I think there's around 20 units,
Okay.
and it's mixed housing. I mean, it's senior housing, so it's definitely for 55 and older. And it's small apartment units. It's somewhat similar to the Hanover housing units that are there now. You know, they're I don't think there's any two-bedroom units there. I think it's
No.
mostly one-bedroom units. They're pretty basic, but they, you know, definitely do the trick.
They must be a model.
Yeah.
And Hanover must be a model, it's in New Hampshire.
Mhm.
But don't they have sewer and
Well, they do, I mean,
believe
there's
so.
a house that
So, I
you
mean,
have
to me,
sewer,
it's like,
they have
right
septic
there is a
and water.
non-starter, because we don't have sewer, right, so.
Well, it doesn't have to happen. That's,
No. But you need enough land to
They have
make.
water.
What's that?
Norwich does not have sewer, they have water,
They have water.
yes.
They don't have sewer.
Yes.
Mhm.
And Hanover's new, is all, the existing and new, senior housing is all studio and one bedroom.
Do you know the sizes?
I can get those sizes, they're not large,
Yeah, no, I
they're
know.
really small.
Brett, you had something?
Before I say what I'm about to say, I need to say I'm probably no fan of zoning. That said,
I think that's public knowledge.
so, well, I haven't been argued a lot, so to speak.
This isn't
But I
gonna be a
think-
shock to the system.
I think that anything of this like, or most other things, is probably dangerous if it's by right. Because you sign yourself up
I
as
agree.
being you cannot defend yourself
I agree
So-
100%.
from things that you don't even know are coming.
You sound like somebody who likes zoning.
I knew that was gonna come that way. I think that if you did senior housing by special exception, wrote yourself some guidelines, what those special exceptions were, and in the process enabled a higher concentration of square footage tied to lot size and nitrates loading, for lack of a better term, because that's really what it comes down to. You have a very limited number of lots in town, common area.
Would you mind just repeating that? No, I'm serious, I'm not joking, I'm interested. Just go back, I know, but you
No.
said special exception.
I
and then-
think it should be by special exception,
Yeah.
not by right. Allow yourself more square footage as far as the intensity tied to the lot, but maybe tie it to its ability to support the septic loading, because that's really what it's gonna come down to.
Right,
And, you know, as far as the aesthetic things that have been discussed, reason says that goes without saying, so I don't think that's a burdensome requirement. I think that you can only get so, one of the things that talk about is the age, exposure to other ages. Go out on the common and you're exposed to other ages. They're all out there playing all day long.
Exactly.
And
well, I know, I mean, I know.
no, I'm just saying, so I don't think, I mean, the problem is if you, I'm not sure if age restrictions are the right answer, but I'm not sure there's a better one.
Well, that's the thing, is, and from the time, I mean, there were, at the aging in place meetings, there were like a million different opinions, and people wanted to go a whole bunch of different routes. But I came away with the impression that mostly people wanted to be guaranteed a
Peace and
place,
quiet.
as you put it, a place that seniors, that was designated for seniors. And it's not, it wasn't in the context of, oh, I don't want any of these other people around me. It's like, and most people wanted to be in the center. And they wanted to be, it wanted to be walkable, and they wanted access to a mixed population, but they wanted to be able to retreat into their own place to get, when they needed to get away from that. That was my takeaway, for good or for bad. Yeah.
I would agree, I think that in general, people in that group were very much interested in having, able to cluster housing because the support received from neighbors close by,
Yeah.
within your property limits, I guess. I am not versed at all in all of the stuff that you guys are like so engaged in. But what I do know is that when elders, seniors are in a place where they can get support from their neighbors, and when they are mutually helpful to each other, and that ease of access is there, both for services and for supports, it's a wonderful thing. And people feel
that
supported.
was, at least my thinking,
Yeah.
generally drawing this up, was that these would be dedicated to seniors, but it would be centrally located,
Yeah,
precisely
And
so
that's-
that within the structure, they had each other, but they're completely incorporated, and I shouldn't say they, because I'm one of they.
We
We,
are.
but they are embraced within the central community.
Right, and, you know, I think that there's, I agree, I feel like there's some problem as we think about, you know, incorporating that into a 5,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
That's just not gonna work.
Yeah.
You know, there's just not enough space,
Yeah.
basically, to make that a reality. It seems, you know, I agree with Rich's kind of like, well, that needs us like that 400 or 600
Right.
or whatever square foot place, and, you know, 750
So,
to
I mean,
1,000 square feet seems minimal.
What we're looking for, again, this is a provision, we're looking for a sweet spot, you know, enough density to make it attractive,
Right,
without too much density,
yeah,
and too, you know,
and enough units so that you can have some portion of them affordable.
some
By
affordable,
standard.
and also in here, it is a possibility for mixed use in those buildings, so that if somebody wanted to have, which would then make the units like 200 square feet, which could be, but so that you could have, you know, somebody wanted to have a hairdresser or something in the building, so people didn't have to go out. That's a big challenge, and
It's huge.
it's not easy just to say, well, you know, do that. I wish it was that easy, but what I would like to see happen is that this become an exploration of how we can find a sweet spot between what's practical and what will actually address the issue.
I mean, ideal would be sometime in the center of town, but in essence, I think that even if we ran it up into the commercial districts, you know, the ability to get around, there's always gonna be somebody in the building that can drive, or there's, you know, those guys are around, you know, I mean, we are such an extremely lucky community. We have people who are looking for opportunities. We have school kids who want to interview seniors. We've got a school that welcomes folks in to volunteer. We have a lot of resources that other communities don't have. And this is one thing that we don't have. And I think it would be great if we could do that.
After-
Rusty, you didn't get a chance.
So, I would just like this board to think about, I mean, one of the things you put in your proposal is it's a Lyme Common District. If you look at the Lyme Common District and you're just gonna build out, I don't wanna point my fingers at the Pinnacle project, because obviously that's a hot button. Find a property that's in the Common District that you think is appropriate for this kind of a, and how could you possibly build it there? There's nowhere in the Common District that I know of that this can be built. Therefore, I think, without throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I think something that allows developers to consider the corridor of Route 10 is, it opens the door, and there's not a whole lot of land left from the corridor of Route 10 anymore either. So there might be a project, but
There's
if
quite
you
a
look,
bit, there's quite a bit of land.
it's all conserved now, and it's all, there's not a lot of land left, but pick
We'll get
one.
into that discussion.
But pick one and look at it and say, what are the influences that prevent a developer from considering putting something like this
So-
in the town line?
I guess, first of all, I'm interested in what your thoughts about this special exception. And what we can do now, we've gotten a lot of feedback, is we can have discussions about what changes we want to make in this approach, and take it from there. It's very valuable for us to hear from you. Yeah.
This conversation is largely over seniors being clustered in one spot. And I think, you know, from conversations I've had with Dave, none of this has really applied to anything that I've really done. But there's mechanism within the ordinance for having some understanding about projects through, I believe, special exceptions for like handicap, et cetera. And we talked about some of that sort of stuff. And if you have a sort of a quiet mechanism in there, so that if somebody's building a house or two houses, they might not be age restricted, but you might be, the town as a whole might be happy that those houses were at least built with elderly in mind. And, you know, certainly some of the houses, everything that I've had anything to do with in probably 4 or 5 years, it all had, you know, full handicap showers and all of that stuff. It works, whether, no matter what age group, everybody's pretty happy to have nice showers and the ability to get around. So, you know.
But what are you suggesting?
Well, I'm
that
just
doesn't
suggesting,
exist
and
now?
I don't know what obstacle somebody would run into, but having a mechanism, so if somebody's running into a building obstacle, if there was an avenue to help solve the problem.
I think if you look at, there are waivers that the zoning board can give for handicap access, or if there's trying to create handicap accessible buildings, if there's a hindrance because of the zoning board can offer a waiver. And I think he's going to offer a waiver for,
Yeah, well, I don't think it's any big thing, but we've been talking about Earl Strauss building, for example, and trying to get a more reasonable entryway on there, except the building was pre-zoning, it's more square footage
It's
than it's
already
permitted.
all-
I'm sorry?
It's already all used up.
yeah, the building.
Yeah,
the
so,
buffer.
but now you try to put a decent entryway on that might have, you know, handicap access to the second floor, and there's
So
a
is that
mechanism
is
where
that
you
something
can.
that could be waived?
Well,
Well, I think
I'm just using it as an example, I mean.
I think we can work around that. I think there are ways of dealing with it.
So, and again, I don't want to talk, I don't
No,
want to
and
say
I'm
we're
not-
talking about, but in terms of.
I'm just trying to use it as an example, that
But in
if somebody
terms of
has an
what-
obstacle, if there's a mechanism where the party can come to the town and say, look, you know, here we are.
So, does that exist?
There's nothing for over 55, or for, you know, senior.
Right.
But for
For access, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you were able, and I'm not just sure how that would flow, but if you were able to have that kind of a mechanism, and back to the special exception conversation earlier, to allow somebody to, it's a bit of a fictitious conversation, because I don't have any specific thing in mind. I'm just trying to suggest an avenue so that if somebody's trying to do something, maybe not in a
Yeah,
large.
but that's what I'm getting, apparently,
Well, there's some avenues for handicap, there's nothing specifically
for seniors.
for seniors. And I'm not sure what the particular, also it could be the special exception, you know, you create a new special exception that gives the zoning board some greater abilities to, and I guess I need to look at what, the zoning board has certain abilities under state law, and it may be that those need, that it would have to go through site plan review with the planning board, and the planning board can give those same, relax some restrictions.
I think we had a conversation many years ago about the house and the garage, and we couldn't attach them.
Right.
But we could attach them so that that party could walk from one building to the other without
Exactly, that was
falling on the others.
handicap.
And that's sort of example that, you know.
And that's something, you know, work through the zoning board for.
Yeah.
A building that's already in place that potentially could be converted into multiple houses, you know,
Even if it was a
units.
single house, because I mean, and I'm not discounting
Sure.
multiple
No, no,
buildings, but
but-
I'm just
yeah.
trying to say there's a lot of housing that's single-family dwelling that will accomplish a lot of what you're talking about.
And
But that's
it's
part,
smaller,
so,
less expensive,
but-
more
so-
accessible.
using that as an example again, so how many units are you talking about that would accomplish?
In that aspect of the conversation, I wasn't talking necessarily about multiple units, it's more a problematic lot that, you know, somebody's trying to do housing for elderly, and maybe you've got footprint enough to put a building on it, but not a garage, for example, and you're trying to accommodate somebody.
Oh, so you're talking about,
Trying to make a single-family dwelling so that it would accommodate elderly, when it might not otherwise.
so Vicki, are you addressing that that issue?
Well, I was questioning, I was just trying, it seemed like that we had it somewhat in the wording already.
The planning board is consistent with site plan review standards, you can modify certain dimensional controls, frontage, setback, lot width, maximum building footprint, maximum lot coverage. So that,
That may be good.
Yes, through site plan review, which I said, I don't believe the zoning board has the authority to be able to relax those unless there are certain conditions.
There's a state law that allows provisions for accessibility improvements that would otherwise violate the zoning ordinance. But I think along with that is when the person who is meeting that ramp, for example, that goes in the front setback, then that needs to be pulled out of the front setback. So it's related to the person in the occupancy. So I'm pretty sure for a commercial situation, if it remained commercial open to the public, but then it could remain, as long as it, but if it got turned into a private residence not serving a person who needed that accessibility, it would have to be removed. So I think that's how it works, is that it's there to serve the purpose and can violate the zoning ordinance, and that's a provision of state law.
I have no particular thing in mind, it just,
I think through site plan review,
Yeah.
the planning board has the
but
authority.
if you have that
to-
and the special exception
That's
business,
what we're talking about
yeah,
here.
you can get there.
So just for everybody's, information for everybody, we did a build out for the Lyme Common after. And what we, correct me if I'm wrong, which I likely will be, but I think we found that there were 61 possible conversions. Is that the 6 units? In existing, and this was 14, and the potential for 14 new structures. Part of the calculation was gallons per day. So, I mean, I don't know about the loading, what you're talking about. So we use certain parameters to come up with that, and it's very general. I wouldn't swear by the exact numbers, but there's a fair number of conversions. So then the question comes down to, how feasible is it really? And I think that's something we might want to look into some more. And then there's the 14, is it 14? Potential 14 new properties and how possible that is. But we did come out of the build out, it was a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, sounds that way.
Yeah, way more than I thought. I thought we were gonna get about 10 or 15.
I did some study on the build-out, and after, I think the tally sheet that I saw that came out of the meeting was, included Dowd's Country Inn and Lyman as properties that could be divided into 64 units. That was,
I think that's, we
Expected.
included, and I believe we did.
Yes.
Yeah.
So-
We included any properties that could be done.
okay, so that was, okay.
But we excluded like the front building
We
and the cemetery.
excluded buildings that were just not,
Uses.
yeah. These were, it was a build out in perpetuity, basically. Which is,
Ownership could change, purpose could change.
it was perpetuity, it wasn't just for.
Sure, I mean, that's the whole point of a build-out,
Yes.
is when it becomes economically feasible to take a building and convert it into multiple units. That's the point of the build-out.
Right.
Well, we did not do this for. There's like
That's right,
something.
And
so-
we didn't do the cemetery. You had a question?
Just as a trial balloon, we'll discuss this with my wife, but just as a trial balloon. We own 21 Dorchester.
Right.
Next door is that old sand pit. If Tom Heisman and I, Boundary Investments, own that, could something be done, multi-unit, in that area? We're
Is
part
that
of
in
Sand
the
Hills.
Lyme Common?
Hmm?
Yes,
Part of Sand Hill, someone's got great perk.
But you're not talking about the big sand pit, are you?
No,
Just
the
that little
one that's
town.
just down below.
There's another, if you,
Well, with this language, I can't answer that because I don't know. But with this language, something new could be built. I don't know what the dimensions of the
I think
restriction.
one of your limiting factors is that hill behind you.
Mhm.
You know, when you're trying to, build something, you know, so, you have basically,
You have to build a wall to hold back the cement.
but it's the area forward. You're going up behind, I don't know if you're going to have access to that. That would be the,
There's also a whole big area behind this house.
trying to take care of
All right, let's leave the fly alone. Get back to- Any other, yeah,
Any more word on Pondview? Is that,
they were gonna come in and see us, and they left us at the door. But they are apparently going to come back at a more convenient time.
They basically, hadn't really thought about a plan, hadn't had time, and then they got hit with their very busy season of a lot of people. You know, summertime is when people move out and move back in, and they're trying to redo all of the apartments between tenants, and so it becomes a difficult time.
But that's certainly an interesting.
And that's something the board has also considered the Lyme Commercial District, which they are, part of that. It's on both sides of the road. And there is a fair area behind the pond that has always been.
is this where we're plugging for Vermont?
You're doing your Vermont commercial. How much are they paying you?
Nothing, I love it. Anyway, but Chet Pashaw and Steve Davis, I think are both ADA certified, so they designed 2-bedroom, 2 baths, and just amazing. Anyway, but,
Yeah.
getting back to kind of the feeling of delay or the dragging the feet, I think, for like 3 or 5 years or whatever, if we had the captain of this team and a developer and backers and, every architects and everything lined up, you would work with us, and it would be, so easy. Easier. But no, so I think we're waiting for the backer, the developer, and maybe the back.
We'll guarantee it.
I don't want to oversimplify it, but, and I don't know the legalities, you have to figure your way through it. I guess I keep coming back to the special exception and the septic system. And if you use those things as the limiting factor to what somebody can do on the lot, it's really a body count problem. And through your special exception, you leave the door open for the size of the building. Unless I'm mistaken, through the special exception, if you just don't like it, it's not going to happen, because you won't vote for it.
Well, the special exception goes to the zoning board.
Okay.
For site plan review,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So I'm just, however those mechanisms
Yeah.
would need to work, I think if you try to keep it simple, and then if you're trying to get, so you can get something going and not get burned while you do it. I
Yes,
believe the
that's-
special exception
I mean,
thing, but the special
Thank you.
exception thing allows you to kill it if you don't want it.
Or theoretically.
It's not the town so much as the neighbors. I mean,
Well,
honestly.
you're allowed to kill it anyway, regardless of your reason, as long as you have that
No,
mechanism.
but it's neighbors that tend to have more problems with change than the town for some reason.
But your suggestion of the special exception, I think is intriguing. And I'd like to think about that.
We need to be careful about what criteria we apply.
Well, I mean, to Brett's point, we don't want to get burned. I mean, the town doesn't want to get burned.
Of course not.
And that's always the balancing difficulty. But I think that's an interesting.
As far as the neighbors thing, you just have to, whoever's doing whatever they're doing is gonna have to roll the dice, and if they don't get by the neighbors, it's dead anyway. but that's a different conversation. And I don't think that's gonna go away no matter how you write the ordinance.
Well, I've never heard that be a problem in mine.
No. Short of, and if you go through the by right business, I'm not sure that it's fair to ram it down everybody's throat either, so.
I like the special exemptions idea, I think you should.
What's that?
I like the special exemption idea, I think.
Special
that-
exception.
Yes, you should run with that, but also you have to remember, this is all very self-limiting by the fact that, sewage, no water, so that in itself is gonna keep everything kind of contained. And, there's just not a whole lot of land around that you're gonna see like these major developments, it's all gonna be small development anyway. So then it's just a matter of figuring out what folks want, and what the price point's gonna be. So,
Our neighbor objections probably as few as any with senior housing.
I'm gonna ask you what you asked me earlier. Could you speak up, young man?
Yes. I understand neighbor objections to some development, like the way it is, but surely a senior development, senior housing is going to be as unintrusive as almost anything I can imagine.
You know,
No?
I mean, I'm sorry to say that I wouldn't assume.
yeah, but they're coming with cars and everything that people are scared about.
Yeah.
Well, that children look at
I mean,
And the children will
what I am very interested and committed to trying to find a solution to this. I have been for a number of years, and in a way where we don't get burned, as you put it. And I think what we've heard tonight is really helpful and valuable. We've gotten a wide variety of feedback. And I think we need to go back to the drawing board and see if people on board bring in other language. I think I'd like to think about a special exception avenue and ways that this can be improved.
Could I follow on with something that Lenore said?
Yeah.
We're not developers, none of us are professional developers. Would it help for the board to get in a consultant and help us understand what is feasible? To look at the downtown, to look at other things that, other places, other kinds of developments, and give us a notion of what is economically feasible.
I think we can discuss that. I think having Brett here has been extremely helpful. And we can discuss what we want to do. Yeah.
Tim, are you supportive of this senior, enabling senior housing behavior? Do you agree with the need?
I support senior housing, for sure. The feedback I'm getting, I think, from most people is that they really want senior housing. It sounds like people, and I agree with it.
Is everybody gonna have to take a pledge?
Tim's been here so long, and on the board so long, so I have no idea where.
Well, we've been thinking about this for a long time, as John said, and we're really getting to the point where I think we're gonna do something. So,
There are not many people in this room that are not seniors. So, I mean, we're talking about, ourselves.
Well, anyway, it's so helpful to have you come, because otherwise we're in an echo chamber. So first of all, I'd really like to thank you, and now I'd like to ask you, no. Now I'd like to ask us to leave, although I guess we have to do the minutes and a couple of other things. But thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, the minutes, does anybody have any changes for the minutes?
And then on the second page, item 3, right up in the bottom. I just wondered if we should word it a little differently, maybe. John noted that given the field out suggested that there were
Excuse me, is this
limited
someone's purse?
That's the bag for the camera.
Oh, okay.
Thank you
They were
for yours.
asking if somebody left something.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can take it, and he doesn't need it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you know, you're right, you're right.
So
yeah.
where are you
Yeah.
second page, I don't think, third paragraph from the fourth paragraph of the bottom page, John, it says John noted. John noted that given the build out suggested that there are limited possibilities for new construction.
Yeah, I wouldn't word it just looking.
I wasn't exactly sure what you were saying.
I'm saying that,
Because there were 14 possible, is that limited? It's actually more than I ever thought.
yeah, I think that I worded that,
Yeah, we can approve it.
Well, I would just take out that first part and say, John believed that there were areas in the Lyme commercial district that could support new construction.
yeah, I think that would be,
Yeah. It's about as clear as you can usually, so.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably verbatim.
That was
no,
clear.
the author sometimes trips over words, and it's too many words going.
So, and then the top, take out the E after
No, he wasn't talking about
Oh, he said about time.
because the clock
Got it.
second, they said time second. All right, so, is that it? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to move the minutes as amended by Tim, time. And do I have a second? Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Okay. I think you've probably been pretty busy, but did you ever get the final build-out stuff done?
I have not. I've
Okay,
been
so let's have that for the next time.
currently working on 85 letters
To the,
to landowners for the tree trimming.
all right, so next time we have the tree trimming meeting, right?
Yep, tree trimming.
And,
It'll take all of 5 minutes.
Hopefully.
is that you think? Because there was one time they came in there.
Right, people should be working directly with the utility company, maybe do outreach directly themselves. This is a lot of.
Reformatted. Okay. All right, so next time, what I would ask everybody to do is to be as specific as possible. I'd really like to move this along. It's late in the year, and if we're gonna get something to the town, we need to have the rubber meet the road and argue out whatever we have to argue out. But please be as specific as possible in language that would go into the article.
So can you send out, it seems like for me, the easiest way to do this would be a modified version of this.
Right.
So can you send out a Word version of this to us so that we can add in what we think is,
Is that, that's what I, I wrote it on yours? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'll copy it over.
I think we need to see if we can surface that state report. Yeah.
I mean, I never,
Well, I'm just suggesting that we try.
Well, our files are in perfect condition right
You
now
can
to
do
be
it right
doing
now?
searches, so.
Well, maybe, I don't know what the answer is, but what I'm concerned about is, especially with the build-out analysis for the county district, looking better than what we maybe initially anticipated. If there's a very strong limiting factor, it might actually change the outcomes
Right.
significantly. So it's got nothing to do with necessarily with.
We'll take a look, I mean, if it was filed, there's only limited places that it would have been.
Brett was talking about an engineer that we have, I think maybe it's Robert Cantel.
it's probably wrong.
I don't know if that helps or not, he's gone, but,
you know, Brett might have a few places where or people might, I don't know, Dave, I just.
And I don't know
Where to go,
Oh,
you know, see if you can find anyone that
This is
can.
that every site in and of itself is got the number of bedrooms and the size of the leach field and all that is sort of specific, and it's dealt with, you know, each one is supposed to be dealing with the nitrate loading that may come from that building, that's.
Right.
You mean
so-
it's site specific?
Yeah, every single one is not supposed to be contaminated
Right.
into the groundwater with nitrates, so taken in total, they all should.
But
be-
we know that there are a lot of tree zoning.
Right, but if those things come into our, they're gonna get upgraded. Well, I mean, they may be the ones that get scooped up because, I know Grayson's house has got a bad septic, and the next owner may well say, this is, you know, so big, why do you need more units, and I'm gonna upgrade this.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
And to be honest, I don't know if that letter even would be as valid
Today, I
today,
know.
because, you know, 30 years ago, you know, the technology, as you said, and yes, you still have the same nitrate going in, but the way it dissipates it, you know, I'll look up, and, you know, absolutely.
I met with a developer today, and her two neighbors,
Well, they're gonna come and see us. But
well, I
mean,
know, but this is like I don't think that the Purcells have a whole lot of experience in development, the property managers more. And, so these people were, out of town with, you know, the developers, and it's like, that's what you need, is somebody who's got experience and will come to money, and I don't want to get in the woods.
And what about, to Rich's point, do we wanna have a developer consultant?
No,
Because,
no. Because everybody, you know, if Anthony dies and gives me the property, that changes the whole economics about what I can do with that property. If I am an experienced developer and can bring in a team, my economics are gonna be much different than David's, because he doesn't have, you know, the machine that creates the units. So, I mean, it's, I don't know how we could generalize in order to make it meaningful, and I don't know what we could do in our regulation to respond to that anyway. Because economic realities are different for every group. I mean, I am gonna ask you, so at the Pinnacle project, your profit margin has changed over time, I'm sure, and I don't know, you know, and that is for most investment groups, there's a goal. And everyone has different expectations. If you get a nonprofit developer like Good Pines, you know, it's very different economics. So I don't know what
I
the
see
benefit
what
would
you're
be
saying, yeah.
for us to spend money on that kind of inquiry, because that situation is so different.
So, let's talk about community colleges where they're not focused on big profits. They still got to cover the costs.
Yes, they do.
And so, you know, could we ask them to come talk to us about what expenses are involved in some kind of a senior housing?
They looked at all.
Yes.
I mean, too much else on there, I mean, like
Right.
easy, like you're talking about the library project and Hannibal project. Here was land being basically given to them, easy.
Earl's
So,
project is?
not Earl's project,
Oh.
the Hannibal project and the
Oh,
one for
yeah,
the library,
right.
you know, those were ones
Sure.
that, you know, these are.
well,
these are
we
not-
had one,
I get confused on the planning board side of this. When we start looking at the commerciality of it.
well, it starts to get a
Because
little.
that part, I just don't quite see.
What we're trying to do, as Vicky says, is it's very hard to come up with some grand formula for what makes things specific, because I mean, what makes things work, because everything is so specific to a particular property. What, using the senior housing as an example, what I'm hoping to do is to, as a generality, it's a generalization. When you're writing an amendment, it's a generalization. You can't be site-specific. But I'm looking to make the possibility more attractive and feasible through new language. And I agree with you that
If you
it's
have
so
to balance, if you're balancing things, you're trying to create the ability to do it without creating a lot of other problems at
Right,
the
I
same
mean,
time.
I
So,
think-
and then, but the economics, you can't just focus on the economics of it and say, we need to make this economically feasible, because you're then going to have to push aside all the other issues.
And I think that was Brett's point about doing it by right. And as he pointed out, he's not a big fan of zoning. But then you open up a lot of problems, potentially for the town. So, again, it's 9 o'clock. This is the witching hour. Everybody has 2 weeks to put in their 2 cents, and then we'll come back and take it from there.
One more item, and this is Rich, this is all you, so I will,
Good.
oh, actually, I have 2 more items.
Go ahead.
First of all, Corolla Lease subdivision, they have withdrawn,
Oh, great.
so they have a buyer that looks like they're going to buy
It's
everything.
not, it's a sale pending on the side.
Yeah, so that, the board, when I get the official letter this week.
So we're done. So
So
do
you're
we
done.
need to close that out? or-
I will close it out on my end. And
We don't have to do
file-
anything?
Note in the file, they've withdrawn their letter.
But
saying
we
so.
don't have to officially do
No.
it. Okay, and what is this?
Okay. This is a single page, yes. It's budget season. I am asking the planning board to consider making requests to the select board for expenses, to budget money for various things. I list 3 of them. Workshops, conferences, and things like that that the planning board should go to. I've gone to a number of these on my own time. I think they're very useful. It's interesting to do. So I would ask that the board consider, we'll talk about it now, I'll just tick through these real fast and we can talk about it next time. Should we consider coming up with a request to the town to say reimburse us for some of these conferences? They're not terribly expensive, maybe.
So I've gone to a couple that I got. I was
There's
covered on.
certain ones that I will, I do put in my budget. The OEP planning and zoning.
But there's some that aren't.
Well, for the most part, what I'm trying to do is not have my budget completely.
So you're trying to protect your budget, you have to
I'm trying-
balance,
yeah,
protect your budget. And
so-
you're asking for more money.
And I'm saying, yeah, let's ask for enough money,
Okay.
so that if we wanna go to some of these conferences, we don't have to go
Right, so-
steal from David.
so we-
That's number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, David says he hasn't seen a conference that he'd like to go to. I'd like to make sure he can go get training, if he saw there was.
I do put money in my budget for that, so there
Okay,
is,
all right.
I
Well,
really have no.
If we don't steal money from you for these other things, then maybe that's good enough. Second thing, we actually got a lot of work out of the Regional Planning Commission for the study. I think we could have done a lot more work from them if we had a bigger budget and had been able to say to them, let's do some more work for us. And so, the question I ask is, are there things that people should think about asking people to do? Third, we've got a housing chapter coming up. Do we want to chase a grant for helping to get some experts to come in and talk about these sorts of things? The Plan New Hampshire has a municipal technical assistance grant that is.
All right, I've heard it. I get it. So everybody has this, and everybody can read it, and bring in their thoughts next time.
Good.
All right, and that's it.
That's it.
I'd like to take this opportunity to shut this ship, ship, S-H-I-P,
That's what
down.
that's what I heard. Okay, thank you, everybody.
All right. Okay, oh, and I did get